Hey everyone, welcome back to the latest GoSkills Excel Challenge solution. How close did you get to solving it? Well, we've got Microsoft trainer Deborah Ashby ready to share her solution. Check it out right now.
So let's take a look at my solution to this challenge. The first thing I asked you to do was to enter today's date into cell C2 using a formula. So for this, we can use the today formula. Now remember, this is a formula that doesn't have any arguments. It's going to output the current date into the cell, and it automatically updates when the day changes. That's all I need you to do just there. The next thing I asked you to do was to change the layout of the data so the column headings are in the columns and not the rows. Now, I mentioned that there are a couple of different methods that you could use to do this, and I said if you use a formula, I'd like you to remove the underlying formula from the result and then reapply any formatting. And I also mentioned delete any zeros you see in columns. Now, the first method you could have used would be to select everything, Control A, Control C to copy, and then you could have chosen Paste Special and Transpose. That would have flipped the data the other way round. Now there is also a transpose formula, and that's what I'm going to use. So I'm going to click in a cell underneath the data, and we're going to type in equals transpose. And all we need to do here is select the array, close the bracket, hit enter, and you can see that that is going to flip that data the other way round. Now I mentioned that if you did choose to use a formula method like I have here, I want you to remove the underlying formula from the cells. Because you can see at the moment when I click around, if you look in the formula bar, we still have that formula sitting there and we don't really need it anymore. Now the way that you can do this is to simply copy the data and paste the values. That's just going to remove that formula. So let's press Control A, Control C, and then you could either go up to Paste and choose Paste Values, or you could use the keyboard shortcut Control Shift V just to remove those formulas. And you can see now when I click around, we don't have any formula showing in the formula bar. I asked you to remove any zeros that you have in columns, we don't need those, and reapply any formatting. So I can see here due date needs to be changed to short date, and the amount, I'm just going to use a comma separator just here. So we're looking pretty good so far. Now just to make this a bit easier, I'm going to hide these rows just here to make this look a little bit cleaner. The next thing I asked you to do was to convert the data into an Excel table and name the table Invoices. So all we need to do here is press Control T. Yes, my table has headers. Let's click on OK. I'm going to go up to the table design ribbon, and in the properties group, we're just going to name this table Invoices. I then asked you to apply the table style dark teal, table style light 9. So if we click the drop down here to expose the gallery, it's actually this one just here. So this is the one I wanted you to select, and I asked you to remove banded rows. So if we take a look at our table style options, I currently have banded rows selected. Let's deselect that checkbox. The next task to complete was in the days left column, calculate the number of days left before this invoice is past due based off of today's date. And I want you to make sure that you have the correct formatting applied to this column, otherwise you're going to get some weird and wonderful things. So the formula we need in here is a very simple one. We just need to do the due date minus today's date. Now we are going to copy this formula down, so we need to lock cell C2. Let's hit enter. Now, when I copy this formula down, as I said, we're getting some weird and wonderful things in here, and that's related to the formatting applied to this column. So let's go back to number formatting and just switch that to general, and then it's going to give us the number of days left. So basically what we're saying here is that anything that has a minus value is an invoice that's gone past its due date. The next thing I asked you to do in the status column was add a formula that outputs a status of past due for invoices less than 0 days, due soon for invoices less than 30 days, and OK for invoices due in 30 days or over. Now the way to do this would be to use either nested if statements or the ifs function. So I'm going to use ifs to do this. And ifs is basically very similar to doing nested if statements. It's just a slightly shorter way of doing it. I don't mind which method you used. So our first logical test is if the days left are less than 0 days. If that's true, we want to output a status of past due, comma. We then move on to our next logical test. So logical test 2 is if the days left are less than 30, then we want to output a status of due soon. And finally, logical test 3, if the days left are greater than or equal to 30, then we want a status of OK. That's the formula we needed. Let's close off the bracket, hit enter, and now when we double click to copy down, we should find that those statuses are correct. So everywhere we have a minus, that invoice is past due. Anything between 0 and 30 is due soon, and everything that is 30 or above is okay because that's due way in the future. So we're slowly getting there. The last part of this challenge was to apply conditional formatting that highlights the row wherever an invoice has a status of past due. So to do this, we need to select all of our table data. We're going to go up to conditional formatting and we're going to create ourselves a new rule. And we're going to use a formula for this because what we want to say in here is if the value in the status column effectively is equal to past due, we want to apply some formatting. Now notice when I select the first item in the status column, because this is basically what we're testing, it puts in an absolute cell reference. Now if you keep it like this, when you apply the formatting, it's only going to apply the formatting to that cell. We want it to apply the formatting to the entire row. So this is where you need to do some mixed referencing. Because we want to lock the column, we're always testing whether the status is past due in the column, but we don't want to lock the row. That formatting needs to be able to travel. So we're saying if this cell is equal to past due, then apply the following formatting. Now, I didn't mind too much which formatting you applied. I'm going to go with a grey background fill, and let's go across to font, and I'm going to choose a red font colour. Let's click on OK, and OK again, and there we go. And we should find that if we add an invoice into the bottom just here, I'm just going to copy this next one, the table expands and everything updates. If I was to change this due date to, let's put it into the future, you can see the status column changes and the conditional formatting updates accurately. And that's how I chose to solve this challenge. Tell us what you think about our solution to this challenge by commenting below or joining the conversation on our Slack channel. That's all from me. I will see you next time.
So there it is. Did you get the same results? Did you use the same approach? Or did you try something different? We'd like to know. Share your take on the challenge in the comments below or join us for more discussion in our Slack channel. Link in the description. Thanks for participating and make sure to subscribe to this channel to get an alert when the next challenge is released. We'll see you then.